Hi, I'm Stacy from the From Scratch Farmhouse, and today I'm going to be showing you how I can peaches using zero refined sugar. Even 10-ish years ago when I first started canning peaches, I knew that I didn't want to be taking my healthy, perfectly delicious peaches and dousing them in refined sugar. Now, don't get me wrong, we are not perfect. We definitely eat sugar in this house. However, I have just never been one to want to spend a ton of time and energy and money canning things in sugar because it's not something I feel wonderful about feeding my family. So to me, I might as well buy it at the store if I'm going to do that. Now, I know everyone doesn't feel that way. I won't hold it against you, but this is just something that's worked really well for me. And also nowadays, as we're trying to become more self-sufficient, it's also a great way to reduce the amount of refined sugar that we purchase and replace it with something that we can grow and can ourselves. Okay, so a quick chat about other sweeteners. When I first started looking for a recipe so that we could can our peaches without refined sugar, I came across a lot of recipes that used things like honey, maple syrup, and other sweeteners. The problem with those is that the peaches end up tasting a lot like whatever sweetener you choose. So when I found this recipe, I knew I had to try it, and I was blown away by the results. The most amazing thing about this method is that your peaches will come out tasting like peaches even after they've been canned for a year. It turns out not too many people know to do this or that you can do this. So today I'm going to be showing you my complete step-by-step process for canning peaches, even if you're totally new to canning, and I'm going to be showing you how to do it without that refined sugar. Let me introduce you to the star of the show, white grape juice. Now, white grape juice can either be canned yourself if you have your own grapes, or you can purchase it from the store. Just make sure that if you're purchasing it from the store, it doesn't contain any other ingredients. And of course, when purchasing from the store, organic is always best. White grape juice has a very neutral taste, but it's still very sweet. So when you can your peaches in the white grape juice, the juice actually takes on a peach-like taste, and your peaches remain tasting like peaches. It's a wonderful combination. I think you're going to love it. Definitely worth trying. Now, even if you are a totally beginner canner, I'm gonna make this tutorial super easy to follow along with. All you're gonna need is a box of peaches, white grape juice, and some basic canning supplies. As far as where to get the peaches, I actually purchased this box locally, and they weren't grown locally. I live in northern Wisconsin. However, I'm not super impressed with them. So I will be in the future purchasing from Azure Standard, which is where I've always purchased my bulk peaches and pears. And I've always had great luck with them, so I think I will go back to doing that. Sometimes local grocery stores or co-ops will also have box sales around canning season, so you'll just kind of have to look around in your area to see what works best for you, but I definitely recommend looking at Azure Standard, and I will leave the link for that below.
The supplies that you will need are a bucket to collect the peach skins, a large pot, a large bowl, fruit fresh or a similar product for keeping fruit from turning brown, a cutting board, a knife, a pit remover, I'm just using a strawberry huller here for that purpose, 2 large pots, a slotted spoon, a water bath canner, quart-size canning jars with lids and bands, a ladle, a funnel that fits your jars, a jar lifter, and a bubble popper. Most of these last things that I mentioned come all together in various canning supply sets. I'll leave a link for one such set down below.
Okay, you've got your peaches, your white grape juice, your basic canning supplies. Let's go.
As I'm setting up, I like to lay a towel down next to the stove for setting hot jars, and I also set out my bands and lids so that they are ready to go. Step 1 is to heat up your clean jars and your canner. The easiest way to do this is just to raise up the rack that comes with your canner and set the jars in the rack while the water slowly comes to a boil. By the time you're done prepping the jars of peaches, the jars will be hot. If the water starts boiling before I'm ready, I just turn it down to low while I finish prepping. Step 2 is to heat up your white grape juice in one pot and water in another. The juice can just sit on low for now. The water should be brought to a boil. This pot of water is going to be used to loosen the skin on the peaches. As those 2 pots are heating up, place some ice and cold water into the large bowl and position it close to your pot of boiling water. Step 3 is to remove the skins from your peaches and to slice them. This is done by putting a few at a time into the boiling water for about 5 seconds, and then quickly transferring them to the ice bath with your slotted spoon. This process loosens the skin so that it should slip easily from the peaches as you run your thumb along them. After the skin is removed, you can slice the peach in half and remove the pit. You may want to remove any tougher spots from the center of the peach, like I'm doing here with the holder. However, I know many canners who skip this step and never have a problem. As you finish the peach halves, you can add them to your large empty pot. I then like to sprinkle each layer of peaches with fruit fresh, followed by cold water. This layering keeps the peaches from browning. I don't measure the amount of fruit fresh that I use, I just make sure that each layer is sprinkled lightly and then tossed together. A couple of things to keep in mind as you're going along. Number 1, if your peaches seem like they are getting cooked or squishy, just reduce the amount of time they spend in the boiling water. It doesn't take long for the skin to be loosened, which is the only goal at this point. Number 2, it is very helpful to buy what are called freestone peaches. Most boxes sold for the purpose of canning are going to be this type. Freestone peaches are called this because when you slice the peach in half, the pit comes out easily. On the contrary, if you buy clingstone peaches, well, you can probably figure out what happens. Let's just say that this whole process of prepping the peaches for canning is going to be a lot smoother with a freestone variety. Number 3, you will probably need to continue to add ice to your bowl as you go along. Make sure to have more ice handy. Number 4, yes, you can slice your peaches into quarters instead of halves. It really doesn't matter, but I have just found that halves lie a little nicer in the jars and float less, so that is what I have stuck to. Okay, on to step 4. After all of your peaches are prepped, rinse out your pot you used for boiling water and fill with clean water, then reheat it until it is hot to the touch. While the water is heating up, you can remove your now heated canning jars from the canner and set them on your towel. Now is also a good time to turn up the heat on your grape juice and bring it to a boil. Then you will take a few peach halves at a time, place them in the hot water for just a few seconds or until heated through, and then transfer them to your jars. You will add the halves cut side down so that they stack nicely together. Fill the jars just up to the neck of the jar, or if you're using a headspace measuring tool, to 1 inch below the top of the jar. Step 5. After all of the jars are filled, use your funnel and ladle to add the hot grape juice to the jars. Your goal here is to get to the 1 inch of headspace mark, but this will be perfected in the next step. Step 6. After each jar is filled with both peaches and juice, take your bubble remover tool and slip it down the sides of the jars in order to remove any trapped air bubbles. Because this may affect your liquid levels, I then go back and spoon juice in or out of the jars after all of the bubbles are removed. Make sure that your 1 inch of headspace is maintained. Next, take a clean rag or paper towel and wipe the rims with hot water. Any juice residue left on the rims of the jars may affect the seal. Then you can carefully place lids, followed by rings, onto each jar. When you twist the bands onto the jars, keep in mind that you should never twist it super tightly. You want air to be able to escape and for it to be simple to remove the bands after processing. For this reason, people often say to just tighten with your fingertips, not your whole hand. Step 7 is processing the jars in your water bath canner. Go ahead and place them in your canner. The water in the canner should not be boiling at this point, just hot to the touch. The jars also should be covered with about 2 inches of water. Then, cover the canner and turn the heat to high. When the water comes to a boil, you can start your timer. Quarts of peaches need to be processed for 25 minutes. If your elevation is above 1,000 feet, but below 3,000 feet, you'd increase the time to 30 minutes. For all other altitudes, you can find this information in most canning books and websites. After your timer goes off, turn off the heat and remove the lid. Let the canner cool down for 5 minutes. If you try to remove the jars too quickly, you are more likely to lose some liquid from the jars, which happens when the jars are cooled down too fast. After the 5 minutes is up, remove the jars from the canner using your jar lifter and place them on a towel. Never place them directly on your counter, not just because they might harm your countertops, but because this could cause temperature shock and broken jars. Step 8 is my favorite part. Let the jars sit on your counter for 12 to 24 hours so that they can seal and cool completely. This also gives you a chance to admire your hard work before you tuck them away in your pantry or cellar. You will hear popping noises as the jars seal. Don't ever force the seal, however, by pressing down on the lids. Just let them be. After the cooling period is complete, you can remove the bands and store those for your next canning project. I also like to wipe down my jars with a rag dipped in vinegar to remove any peach juice or hard water stains from processing. And that's it! Your canned peaches are ready to store. You can store them anywhere as they are now shelf stable. I have stored them up on shelves where I'm sure it got warm and never had any problems other than maybe a little discoloration. I do recommend, however, that if you have a dark, cool spot in your home, to store your canned food there. They will retain their quality much longer this way.
Thank you so much for canning along with me today. I hope you found this helpful. If you at all enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss my future content. I make videos each week on homesteading, homeschooling, food from scratch, and creating a handmade home.